So let's talk about something huge. As AI gets more and more powerful, how do we actually know if we can trust it? I mean, how do we grade its performance when it can be absolutely brilliant one minute and then, well, a little dishonest the next? Let's figure out how to give AI its final report card.
You know what? This isn't some made-up scenario. This really, truly happened. A law firm used an AI that just confidently invented fake legal cases out of thin air. And that right there, that gets to the absolute heart of the problem. It's a phenomenon called hallucination, where the AI's extreme confidence completely masks the fact that it's just not true. So how in the world do you test for that?
Okay, here's the best way to wrap your head around this whole thing, and we're going to stick with this idea. Imagine you have to grade a student, but this isn't just any student. This student has read every single book in the world. Seriously, they can talk about any topic with total authority. But, and this is a big but, if they don't know an answer, they will not admit it. They'll just confidently make something up that sounds right.
So let's meet this prodigy of ours. Picture them sitting in a library that contains all of human knowledge. But that library doesn't just have facts. It's also full of rumors, opinions, fan fiction, and all our human biases. And here's our student's biggest flaw. They can't tell the difference between any of it. So let's put an official name to that flaw. When our student lies, we call it a hallucination. And it's not just a simple mistake, like a typo. No, this is the AI generating completely false information and presenting it as if it's a stone-cold fact, with all the confidence of an expert. So the real trick is figuring out how to catch these confident lies.
So how do you grade a student who seemingly knows everything? Well, the first logical step is to give them a standardized test, something to measure their knowledge across a whole bunch of different subjects.
In the AI world, we don't really call them standardized tests. The term you'll hear is benchmarks. And these things are massive exams designed to test everything from, say, high school biology all the way up to professional-level law and computer coding.
And what's just wild is the progress. I mean, look at this. On one of the biggest benchmarks out there, the MMLU, AI performance has just skyrocketed. Back in 2020, the models were basically just guessing, scoring around 25% on a multiple-choice test. Fast forward just 4 years, and they're hitting 90%. I mean, that looks like incredible, off-the-charts learning, right?
But here's the twist. Are these amazing test scores really a sign of genuine intelligence, or is our brilliant student just finding some really clever ways to pass the test without actually learning how to reason?
You see, just like with a real student, a high score can be super misleading. And it turns out there are two major problems we have to investigate here. One, the tests themselves might be flawed. And two, our student, well, they might have found a way to cheat.
First, let's look at a flawed test. Some of these benchmarks, especially older ones, just count how many words match up. This example shows just how absurd that can be. If a person says, "heck yes," and the AI says, "heck no," it gets a high score because most of the words match, even though the meaning is the total opposite. But if it says, "yep," which is basically the right answer, it gets a score of 0. It just doesn't make sense.
And now, let's talk about the cheating. In AI, this is called data contamination. So, remember our student who read every single book in the library? What if one of those books was the answer key to the final exam? In that case, the student isn't really reasoning, are they? They're just remembering.
It's really that simple. The AI is trained on this giant snapshot of the internet. So if the questions and the answers for a benchmark test are anywhere on that snapshot, well, the model sees them during training. It just memorizes the pattern, walks into the exam room, and aces the test without even breaking a sweat. And this isn't just a theory. A researcher noticed something very, very telling. A top AI model aced all the coding problems from before its training data was collected in 2021. But for new problems, ones created after that date, ones it couldn't have possibly seen, it got a perfect 0. That's a huge red flag that it probably saw the answers beforehand.
So, okay, if the automated tests are flawed and our student might be cheating on them, what's the solution? Well, you have to do what any good teacher would do. You sit the student down for a face-to-face interview. And in the AI world, this is called human evaluation.
This is really considered the gold standard. You get actual human experts to check the AI's work. They're looking for all the stuff an automated test would miss, like nuance, if the answer is actually helpful, and most importantly, if it's safe and truthful. It's the best method we've got, but it has its own set of surprising challenges.
Now, just look at this number for a second. It points to a massive problem.
A study got 5 expert AI researchers together and asked them to agree on how to score AI answers. Even after hours of talking it over, they only agreed with each other 67% of the time. Think about that. If the experts can't even agree, how are we supposed to give our student a fair grade? It becomes incredibly subjective.
And there's another deeper problem with that library our students studied in. It didn't just learn facts. It learned every single pattern and association in the books it read. And because the AI is trained on the internet, it picks up on all these weird statistical patterns, like seeing certain jobs or descriptions linked more often with certain groups of people. It's not thinking, it's just mirroring the patterns it was shown, without any clue about what they mean in the real world.
All right, so after the standardized tests and the tricky human interviews, what's the final verdict? What does the report card for our brilliant but very flawed student actually say?
I think ultimately we just have to remember what this AI student really is. It isn't a thinking, reasoning being. It is an incredibly sophisticated pattern-matching machine. It's been trained to do one thing really, really well: predict the next most likely word in a sentence. It really is autocomplete on steroids, designed to sound human, not necessarily to be truthful.
So here's the final takeaway, the comments on the report card. First, those standardized tests, the benchmarks, they're a constantly moving target. As the AIs memorize the old exams, we have to keep creating new, harder ones. Second, even with all its flaws, having a real person check the work, human judgment, is still the best tool we have. And finally, and maybe most importantly, AI is a mirror. It just reflects back everything we fed it, all our knowledge and creativity, yeah, but also all our biases and our mistakes.
And that leaves us with one last, kind of provocative question to chew on. If these models are just a reflection of this massive library of human text we've given them, when we find flaws in the AI, are we really just discovering the flaws in ourselves? Something to think about. Thanks for watching.